Welcome to BA Bootcamp. My name is Luc Vermaas, and together with Gert Zwedijk, we ensure that you stay informed of the latest developments in the field of business analysis. We combine different theoretical approaches with our extensive practical experience from the field, so that you immediately leave our sessions with tangible tips and ideas to put in practice in your daily work. Have fun watching, and if you want to stay informed in our latest videos, follow us on YouTube. So I hope everybody has a great morning, and of course, first of all, thank you for joining. This is our second session for BA Bootcamp. For the people that don't know us yet, BA Bootcamp is an initiative of myself and Gert, which we try to turn our passion and enthusiasm and put that on other people's minds as well, that like the world of business analysis, help people keep up the pace in what are the concepts and the different things that are being introduced in terms of business analysis. So yeah, and also learning from you, right? It's not only us that will tell you how to do it, but we also love to learn from others. So every aspect, business analysis, it's a broad topic. We will discuss it today as well. So I think everybody has certain specialties. And we hope that everybody brings that to the table and we can learn from each other as well. So again, thank you for joining our session. So this one is the first session of actually a series. And the reason why we call it a series is because we are going to untangle what we call a BABOK. For the people that don't know the BABOK, we will introduce it formally later on. But before we kick off, the series is, somebody's joining. So it's a 9-part series. So these are the episodes we will be hosting in the near future. We don't put any timings yet, because we also want to get the feedback from you and the people who join. What is the preferred time to actually join in? Preferably, we have as much as live audience as possible, because that is more interaction. But at the same time, we also know it's difficult to get everybody on the same time. So now we tried some timings between 11 and 12, which is also working days. But maybe people, prefer the evening. So we're also trying to experiment with that. So also here, your feedback is very much appreciated. This is what you can expect in the coming, hopefully next 2 months, we can finalize the whole series. But maybe before we kick in, just very short about myself and Gert. As you can see, we are both also practitioners of the IIBA group, so certified CBAP. Gert, I've just started my journey. So I have got my ECBA certification last year, and actually this year I'm trying to go for my second one. So I'm also still learning. So background of Gert, maybe you can explain a little bit about what you've done.
And how. Thank you. Gert Zwedijk, I'm also learning still. I'm a CBAP since a couple of years. Lately, I did the AAC as well, which is the Agile certificate for the IIBA. So yeah, I'm a trainer. I'm an analyst in practice. So I work on different projects, and I'm a Scrum Master and Agile coach at the Ministry of Justice. So that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so for myself, so my background is more focused on, so I initially started as a Salesforce consultant, which is more focused on the tech side of things, but now I moved more towards the business side, focusing on business process management, business analysis, and therefore I'm really, on the intersection of business and IT, really helping to get the right solutions in for the business, which my specialty is Salesforce CRM. So there you have a nice, I think, blend of Gert being a very broad business analyst or business analysis practitioner, and my angle is more, let's say, specialized. So it's, I think, a nice combination of experience we bring to the table. But that's not why we are here. We are here to talk about, maybe first this, just some rules of engagement. We're not so strict. So please unmute if you have anything to, or either a question or you have any relevant experiences you want to share while we're talking about a specific topic. That's exactly why we do this, right? It's not us telling a story for 1 hour and then you leave again. No, we hope to get also some interaction in. So feel free, if you have nice examples on the topic we're discussing, then yeah, jump in whenever you think is suitable. And also, if possible, turn on your camera. It's always nice to see some faces, especially around these times where we already do so much video calls. The topic of today. So the series is called Untangle the BABOK. So for people who are really new to either the BABOK or the IIBA organization, just in short, and I think we even have some people from IIBA Netherlands organization joining us. So we're honored to have you in there as well. And maybe you can even, well, if you want, explain a little bit about the Dutch organization. But in general, IIBA is a non-profit organization that is really a network of yeah, professionals that want to professionalize the work of business analysis. Therefore, with that, they have a tool or an asset, which is called the BABOK Guide, which is basically the globally recognized standard for the practice of business analysis, which, if I talk about my personal experience I had when I started to, well, get to know IIBA, I found that, hey, this is a great community of people like-minded that want to, well, become even better in business analysis, help build the profession. So that was basically what attracted me in becoming a member. But at the same time, the BABOK is a great tool or asset, for me at least, to help structure the work. I mean, in the end, it's not that when you read the BABOK and afterwards you are the best business analyst you can be, because in the end, I really believe that it's a combination of theory and practice that makes a good business analyst. But what I saw a difference in, well, let's say before I knew the BABOK or applied the BABOK and after, I really saw a difference in structure. So for instance, if I now have a situation where I need to go in, I first quickly check at the BABOK, like, okay, what were again the things I needed to do for planning? So how do I actually plan my work? Oh yeah, I have to look at what's the type of situation I'm in, internationally, local project, what are the challenges that might be facing, so that I be prepared for what I'm going to do. And then, well, basically for me, it's literally a guide that I sometimes refer back to whenever I have to perform a certain task. I always first look at theory, and then I put my own practical sauce and the context of the business on it. And together, that makes it, for me, a really pleasant way of working. That's why I really like the BABOK. But maybe somebody from the IIBA organization is in. I cannot, because I share my screen, so I cannot really see who is in. But maybe is there's somebody from the IIBA organization that wants to add anything, maybe specifically around the Dutch organization, or don't we have the people in yet?
Maybe I'm a member of the Dutch IIBA, but I'm not.
Hey, Arnoud. Yeah, I see you.
Yeah, but I don't have to add anything about the BABOK. Sorry.
Maybe not, because you are also, if I'm correct, CBAP certified, correct?
No. No, I'm
not. Oh, okay. I thought it. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, in that case, so if you want to become a member of the IIBA organization, know that there are different chapters. So there is a Dutch chapter as well, where you actually can, discuss with like-minded people around certain topics. I must say, they organize quite some events. In this case, now it's a lot of digital events or webinars where they discuss about interesting topics that you can just tap into.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the exact reason why I joined the IIBA, to learn about the standard, and also to get in to learn to know other BAs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great way also to build your network, definitely.
Great. Yeah.
But what we also know is that from experience, both Gert and I had the same experience, but also when I talk to people that are at the moment studying for the certification process, that it's a pretty tough nut to crack. right? The BABOK book. Yeah, it's 400 pages of text, and to my personal opinion, often with limited context. So it's really theoretical, with sometimes a link to some practice. But yeah, again, I missed a bit of that. Okay, how can I really apply this now in my daily work? So that took me some time, and that's the whole reason why we started this webinar series. So it's called Untangle the BABOK. So basically, we're trying to step by step take you through every chapter and really put the theory to practice with examples and everything. So that's the reason why we started this initiative. So we will talk about the perspectives, knowledge areas, key concepts, techniques, competencies. So there's a lot of things to grasp. But at the same time, there is some form of logic in there that we try to get into these webinars. So a starting point is what is the purpose and why is there actually a BABOK? Well, first of all, it's to define the profession of business analysis. You can see it as like the standards of how we, if everybody works in a similar way, in the same practical practitioner way, then it's much easier to work together, right? It's the same as the BPMN 2.0 principle, to write down business processes. There is a common way how we do it, so everybody who writes them understands them. Well, basically, you can see the BABOK as a similar, asset that tries to, in certain ways, standardize tasks and things, so that whenever we do business analysis, or you do it with a group of business analysts, you all have like a similar way of working, which will help you, achieve much faster results in your work. But it's also really a book that is describing the skills that are important for today's business analysts. So we also going to talk about the competencies, because it's not that a business analyst is doing business analysis. No, in the end, everybody who is working in the business, that's our belief, everybody is a business analyst. So everybody could benefit from either maybe certain tasks or a lot of them, but everybody can benefit from understanding a bit more about the background of business analysis and what is a framework you can apply in your daily work. So that's really the reason why the IIBA has built this great asset. So what is in there? Let's try and visualize it. For the people who didn't see the book, basically the book is built on 5 main topics, which are called the key concepts, knowledge areas, underlying competencies, techniques, and perspectives. But these are the ones that are described. So for today's webinar, we will really focus on the first part, which is the key concepts. But there will be plenty of more topics that we're going to discuss. So for instance, the knowledge areas, they all have their specific chapter, which is basically, you can see as a knowledge area, a specific set of tasks you can apply into the phase of a project you're in, which every task has its, things like what's the purpose of the task, what a description of the task, what do you need to actually perform the task, what are the inputs, what are the elements you should do as part of that task, how can you do it, like what are guidelines and tools I can use to make a success of this task, what are some of the techniques I can use, what are common stakeholders that I will that I will face during the execution of the task, and of course, what is important, what will you deliver as output of that task. So there is a structure in the BABOK, and hopefully this is kind of what we try to do, is visualize it. So whenever we talk about elements, then you know, oh, okay, elements, that's part of a task, which is part of a knowledge area. Or if we talk about techniques, which is also a part of a knowledge area, but there are so many techniques, and that we try also to apply certain techniques to certain knowledge areas that work best, which is called the best practices. So that's how we try to build our webinar approach as well. So we will do a session per key topic. So we talked about key concepts today. We're going to take the knowledge area separately. We're going to talk about the competencies. The techniques will fall within the different knowledge areas topics, because we don't think that a technique should be discuss separately, because the power of a technique is when you combine it with a task that you should perform and then put that into practice. And we're going to talk about perspectives, which is, I think, an important part to discuss when you have different viewing angles of a project, but more on that later. So now giving the word to Gert, and he will.
Yeah. Actually, this is one of the slides we showed you in lesson 1. There's two things. There's business analysis and there's the business analyst. In many organizations, there's a separate job title, business analyst, and we want to make clear that in this training and in the whole series, a business analyst is somebody who does business analysis. So that may be a programmer. It may be somebody who has the job title of tester. It may be anybody in your company, because business analysis, the definition is so broad that many people actually do business analysis in their daily jobs. So that's what this slide is all about. So in the next lessons we will see the business analyst may have different job titles in practice. Yeah. So key concepts. We're going to talk about the BACCM, the BACCM. The key terms, requirement classification scheme, stakeholders, and requirements and design. First, the BACCM. The BACCM is, I get all messages. The BACCM is about 6 elements: needs, changes, solutions, contexts, value, and stakeholders. And as you can see in this slide, they're all connected to each other. What BA is about finding needs, and the needs can be business needs or stakeholder needs. And what you will have to do as a BA is you have to find solution to those needs. And in all cases, implementing a solution means a change to an organization. So that's the change part. This change can be very substantial, but it can also be marginal. I'll give you an example later. The context may vary from occasion to occasion. The change will also influence or will be influenced by stakeholders. And stakeholders may have specific needs that have a lot of value for them. So as you can see, all these elements of the BACCM are related to each other. And I'll give you 2 examples. One example is a big change, and another one is a smaller change. The first one is about a car company that set the goal to produce only electric models by the year 2025. They are still producing combustion engines today, but they want to get rid of these models in 2025. This is obviously a clear business need. And this may be an opportunity as batteries become cheaper and cheaper and consumers become more aware of climate change. Or this may be a problem because a lot of the competitors already have a solid market share in electric cars, and this company doesn't. And of course, this may cost the company a lot of money in the near future. So what's the solution? The solution is producing electric cars and selling them to customers. And that may sound easy, but this means that the company will need to change their production plans. So this will lead to huge changes in the organization and their suppliers. And that means the company doesn't need exhaustion pipes any longer. So the supplier of exhaustion pipes will have to change its strategy as well. Instead, battery companies will become the new supplier of this car company. A huge change that will involve a lot of stakeholders. The context in this case is not only the entire company itself, but includes their suppliers and other existing partners. Even government rules are part of this context, as you can imagine, because some things may be subsidized. And then there's value. Actually, this is what it's all about, because a company and all its stakeholders must find a huge business change worthwhile. If there wouldn't be value, why change in the first place? So that's the first example. The other example is about a pizzeria that's struggling because its competition is booming. Today, people not only order pizzas to be delivered, but order Turkish dürüm or sushi. To tackle this problem, the owner of the pizzeria has come up with a plan to lower the threshold for customers to order a pizza. And that's the need, of course. A new app will be developed. That's the solution. That will be downloadable by customers, so they can order pizzas in the most easy way. Couriers will get a special device that will show the direction of the customer's address, so there won't be any delays. The app is connected to the central system that's being used by the office personnel. And this will have an impact on the process in which pizzas are being ordered and delivered. So that's the change. Both pizza makers and deliverers need to be involved in this change. Those are the stakeholders. In their involvement, they will be able to express their needs, things that are of value to them. As the personnel is not able to develop the app themselves, they're dependent on the software supplier that has built many of these apps. And that's, of course, the context. So you can see all these parts of the BACCM are interrelated to each other. And you can see that by the lines in between them. We can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so I was just indeed about to add. So one of the things, and I try to do that myself as well, like there has to be a certain order, right? There should, like, okay, what's first? Needs, no, the changes first, no, so everybody tries to get a certain order in,
Yeah.
but I think the whole thing about the fact that it is a circle and it is interrelated and everything is linked to each other, it's not a certain order. And maybe your starting point can be different, because all of a sudden the context changes, because all of that. Take a look at the situation last week with Shell, that now all of a sudden has to speed up their renewable energy plans. Well, that definitely changes the context. So, and all of a sudden needs start to pop up. Changes there. So it doesn't specifically say there's an order in what should I look at first, but it's just to say that do not forget any of these aspects when you're, if it's a new project or an existing project. These aspects should somewhere be described in order to make sure that you had a full picture.
Yeah. Exactly. There's not always the same point where you start. The starting point can be a context, or most of the times it will be a need from the organization. So organizations, as we told in the last session, we live in a world that's changing faster and faster. So many opportunities are there. Companies that don't change may have a problem, and both are needs, business needs. Okay, key terms. I don't know if you want to say something about this, Luc.
Yeah, so as part of the BABOK, so one of the chapters within the key concepts, it's about key terms. So in this case, the terms as what is business analysis, what is business analysis information, what is the design, what is the definition of enterprise. So basically, it's talking about what are some of the definitions that are often commonly used when we talk about performing business analysis. It's not limited to these terms, right? But these are common terms that are used, but I think the most important message behind this, at least for me, putting this into practice, whenever I have projects, I always start with a definition glossary. Because maybe to give you an example, I currently work on a project which has involved sales departments, and we started talking about the requirements of a quote. So, well, I start my conversation assuming everybody has the same opinion or definition of a quote. But after a few conversations, we realized, like, oh, wait a minute, you talk about a PDF form that is generated as in being a quote. And I was talking about a record in the system that is holding quote information, which is also called in the system a quote. But actually the two things were different, because the quote document could hold different information than actually the quote record in the system. And that, caused confusion. We couldn't really align on the right requirements until we actually found out that we were working with different definitions. So just as an example, and I have many more of those examples, I don't know, maybe anybody in this call can also have an example on this, because there are a lot of funny pictures and things and memes about this.
Who's the customer? Things like customer.
Exactly. But who's the customer? Is that internal, external? Right. It's always so important to outside of this list to make sure that in the context, again, going back to the BACCM, in the context you work in, try to set those key terms, define the key terms that are important, and make sure everybody understands the definition.
Yeah, as we were stating earlier, competencies are very important for the BA, I think, especially communication. One of the first words I write down in trainings I give is the word communication. I think it's all about communication, whether it's about BPMN or about one of these definitions, or communicating to stakeholders, working together with team members. It's all about communication. It gets more and more important, I think, in the near future. Okay, also communication. How do we call things? What kind of requirements do we have? The BABOK, or BABOK, sometimes called BABOK, has a requirement classification scheme. And on top, as you see, are the business needs. Business needs are defined as a problem or opportunity of strategic or tactical importance to be addressed, like the car company I was talking about earlier, or the pizzeria. These companies have business needs. Aligned to those needs are the business requirements, and business requirements are being defined as statements of goals, objectives, and outcomes that describe why a change has been initiated. So the why question. And under that are the stakeholder requirements. And the stakeholder requirements define the needs of stakeholders that must be met in order to achieve the business requirements. So yeah, of course, it's about the business, it's about an organization, but it's also about people working for the organization. And hopefully they are aligned. So the stakeholder requirements are aligned to the business requirement, and they are aligned to the business needs. And that's what the arrow is about, the alignment between all these kinds of requirement types. The business needs, business requirements, and stakeholder requirements are part of the problem domain. It's not about solutions yet. So if you define business requirements, stakeholder requirements, don't think about the solution yet. The solution will come later. Yeah, that's a very important thing, I think, about this classification scheme. And then there's, of course, solution requirements. Sometimes they're called system requirements. So these are requirements for the solution. The system requirements, I'll give you some examples later. Solution requirements can be either functional requirements, what the system needs be able to do, or non-functional requirements, or sometimes called quality requirements. So think about usability, performance, security, that kind of requirements. And then there are transition requirements. And these are a bit different than the other ones because transition requirements only exist during the transition from situation as is to the situation to be. Think about conversion requirements or training people to be able to make the step from the to be situation to the from the as is situation to the to be situation. Um, so, for example, for the car company, the business need would be producing and selling electric cars. The business requirement would be producing like 1,000 cars of some model in 2022. A stakeholder requirement could be, as a supplier, I want to know how many of which part I need to supply a month in advance. A functional requirement would be a system will show the amount of parts in stock 24/7. And the non-functional requirement would be the system will show the parts that are out of stock in a bright red color. So that would be the usability requirement. And then there's transition requirement. The data from the old system, parts that are also be used in the future, will be converted to the new system. So then there is a conversion being taken place. The other example, the pizzeria, would have the business need, we need more customers. Otherwise, we cannot survive. So the business requirement would be, one of the business requirements would be selling 20% more than the year before. A stakeholder requirement would be, as a courier, I want to know what the address of the customer is and what the delivery time is. A functional requirement would be the device will show the address plus directions. And a non-functional requirement would be the device is waterproof. And this can, of course, be stated smarter than this. And we talk about that in a later session. A transition requirement would be personnel needs to be trained to use the device. So these are examples of these classification types. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to hook in because one of the things I always have, and again, putting the practice in, because a lot of people now work more agile, where we talk about epic user stories. I think probably everybody by now knows Jira. So for me, sometimes I get like, okay, what is now actually is a business requirement to use a story or a stakeholder requirement to use a story? So there are often different ideas behind, okay, how should I describe them? So I mean, how I do it personally, so for me the stakeholder requirements are the user stories. Within those user stories you have the acceptance criteria that could either be functional or non-functional, and then the business requirements could be
they can be
the
both.
ethics.
You can use user story. It's just a way to state requirements. Most of the times, user stories have a part which gives some requirements to a certain system, and the rationale is also part of the user story description, and that's of course the user requirement. That's the real need of the customer. So if you have a user story like, as a customer, I want to put products in my shopping cart so I can shop further. Then there's a system requirement that can be implemented, and it also says, and that's the last part of the sentence, it's also about the rationale, the real need of the safe stakeholder that's mentioned in the same user story. So it can be both. You can use user story form for business requirements as well. So most of the times they're being used for solutions. That's true.
Anybody else experienced in this that has a certain way of working? Maybe just to see if we get some other opinions in, because I know it's often a gray area. It's again about definitions.
Yeah.
I think your explanation about how to align it with epics and use stories is a very good one. I also use the epics always as the high over business requirements. Yep. And the use stories, more or less as the stakeholder requirements or the functional requirements. So I think this is a very good explanation how to combine it. And I think it would be also very nice if the BABOK, we learned a new.
It's BABOK is fine.
BABOK, I think it sounds better. Should be more aligned with. It would be nice if it is more aligned with using Scrum and the agile way of work.
Yeah, they have. I'll tell you something about it later in this session. There's an agile extension to the BABOK. So I think it's next session that we are going to zoom into the agile part. So yeah,
right.
Really, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the company I'm working on or working with at the moment, they don't really specify the business solution or the other solutions. They don't make the distinction between it. What I noticed is when you have transition requirements, they often forget that, for instance, when you're making two parts of a new software, there is a module in between to make the transition to the new software environment, that they forget to decode it, to make sure that it is finished.
Decommission the old,
Yeah. So that's part in the transition requirements I'm focusing on, and I see the other BAs start thinking about it as well, and I think that's it should be more in the intention of us, the BA.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really good point. So often transition requirements are forgotten or not looked at, because we always think about, oh yeah, we have a project, we're going from A to B, or from A to Z actually, from the start to all the way to the end, and that's what we're gonna deliver. But especially now with working more agile, and then especially talking about more larger organizations where you cannot go from A to Z in one go. I mean, especially also in the context of where I'm in. I mean, we're basically throwing a whole process upside down, and we're going to do it completely different. But we still have the local or the current architecture. We cannot just replace 5 systems at once. So we have to have a transition plan that they say, okay, first we're going to transition system 1. Therefore, we will build a transition API that in the meanwhile will capture that what we still miss from the other systems. So it's actually a very good point and a often forgotten requirement, which causes a lot of issues in the end of a project.
Sure. So stakeholders. This is a very important one because it's all about stakeholders, right? So stakeholders can be business sponsors. They come up with the money. So it's important you make it you make this person happy. But there's a lot of different stakeholder types. I missed. I don't see the presentation. There it is.
No, it was a mistake.
Oh, no problem. There's different kinds of stakeholders, and if you map these and you start managing them, I think that's a very important part. Notice there are 2 kinds of stakeholders. There are stakeholders who have a lot of power or influence on the project or on the business change initiative. And there may be stakeholders that benefit from the solution. So there's actually 2 dimensions in this. Another thing I want to mention here is that look at the right, you see tester as a stakeholder. Don't think of stakeholders only as like end users or business sponsors or customers. No, it's also about people working on a team. Functional managers, functional beheerders in Dutch, are also important stakeholders. So if you forget mapping them, then you may have big problems by deploying your solution. So that's why this is a very important slide, I think.
Yeah, and if you don't listen well enough, you get the result of the slide. Somebody screaming at you.
Yeah, and of course, if you forget important stakeholders and you start elicitation, and then you miss important requirements. So think about the BACCM. Stakeholders is one part of this BACCM. Forgetting important stakeholders means you don't get the right change. You don't get the right solution.
Well, it's a step that is often because of timing not taken, right? So do a proper stakeholder analysis, which is of course part of the planning knowledge area. But it's we will talk about in the next session also with some techniques which are, it's pretty easy to do, and it just gives a snapshot of, okay, did I cover? You can double check, because often if you forget people, they might feel offended even, and they will even get into resistance mode, right? So it's really important to get everybody
on board,
everybody in.
Yeah.
When I'm mapping stakeholders, I always end the interview with, who else should I talk to? And sometimes there are some nice surprises. Talk to that guy from legal, because he has something to say about it. And he was off my radar, so luckily in time I had him. I always end with the interview with, who else should I talk to?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good practical tip. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you forget, Luc told earlier, these people may become critics to the implementation of the solution, or even become opponents. So you don't want that. Okay, the next slide: requirement versus design. Business analysts are responsible for analysis plus the definition of the design. So what's the difference? Well, requirements are more focused on the problem domain, whereas designs are more focused on the solution domain. But as we see oftentimes is that, especially in agile teams, requirements and designs are intertwined. It starts with requirements, and then you start elaborating them as designs. We were talking earlier about user stories. Well, a user story is typically an example of a requirement. So somebody wants something. On the other side, there's, for instance, activity diagrams, or maybe a sketch on a whiteboard. These are designs. And as I told you before, they are intertwined, because as you sketch an activity diagram on a whiteboard, for instance, you may come up with new requirements. So I always say, well, requirement modeling in general is about elicitation, and it's about documentation, both at the same time. So finding out what the stakeholder wants, I think that's an important part of being a business analyst. Most of the times, stakeholders don't know exactly what they want. So then writing something like a design or a sketch may help the stakeholders to find what they really want or what they really need.
Yeah, exactly. I think from experience, especially working with technology, in this case a platform. So I work a lot with the Salesforce platform, which is you can basically do everything with it if you want. But that also makes it very untangible for stakeholders. Like, okay, but I want this, but often as a business analyst, you already know more about a certain piece of technology, and you can really help also inspire. So I think the word inspiring is also, I think, very important as a business analyst. Really help not only bridge the gap from business to IT, but also the other way around, to go from bring the IT or the technology knowledge and the innovation it could bring those ideas to the table. And often the best way to do it is design. So that's why, of course, often demos are used. My personal favor is I like Sketch, which I just make a the nice thing is they have like a library with Salesforce components, so that makes my life much easier. So I quickly draw a screen within like literally a few minutes, and we can draw together, right? And that makes, and all of a sudden all kinds of ideas pop up, requirements come in that would never be surfaced otherwise.
Exactly. As I told you before, it's all about communication. I think this is also about communication, just building the bridge between business and IT. Requirement is the business side. Design is more like, well, you can use that to show what your perspective is of the solution and show it to that business. That's an important part. And also the design can be shown to the development team, and they know what they have to build. So that's the important bridge we were talking about in the last session. Okay, next slide. Here you can see all these kinds of requirement types we mentioned earlier. Starts with business requirements. Why do I want things? Well, think about the pizzeria who wants to change, wants to have more customers, or the car company who wants to build electric models. Well, that means that you will have another kind of producing cars. So you can start writing or modeling some kind of process model. So the process model could be the design, and the design will grow with time, because as you start mapping this process, you find the stakeholders that will be part of this process. They will be swimming lanes of your process diagram, for instance. So you find your stakeholders and you start interviewing them. You start having workshop with these people. And then you know what they want, you know what they need. So you can fill in that into your design. And that can be the same process diagram. It can be maybe an activity diagram. Maybe you can start drawing use cases or something like that. And so you start thinking about solutions, and you can elaborate them as well. And maybe that will change your process map a little bit. So your design and your requirements are intertwined, as you can see here. Also, what this shows is that you have cycles. So you start building a solution, you do some transition, maybe in your first iterations or your first release, and then the cycle starts all over again. So basically, you say here, it never stops. And that's, I think, the truth. You will always have cycles and think about new things you want to change in your organization. Make sure you have the right stakeholders in the same boat, and start changing the solution bit by bit using the designs. So that's also an important part of the BABOK.
Which
we have 10 more minutes, so
yeah, so
we don't have a lot of time left.
No, but we covered the key concepts. So those were the key concepts, right? So we talked about the key terms, stakeholders, the BACCM, so the things you need to look at in every project when you're performing business analysis. We talked about the requirements versus design. That's really a nice way of working, and about the requirements classification scheme. So the key concepts are really those, well, I would say, high-level topics that you should or could apply in your way of working, right, in the execution of your work. So make sure you make a definition list, understand your stakeholders, make sure that you have the correct definition within the team about what's the business requirement, what's the solution requirement, and how do we document it. It's the user stories and the epic. So it's really the foundation of moving ahead with the more tasked way approach, which going into the knowledge areas, which are the topics we will discuss in our next episodes. As you can see here, these are the 6 that we are going to discuss. Well, and the episodes are here, but we will share that also for everybody who's interested on our YouTube channel. You can follow the content calendar for every session you're interested in to join. And then, of course, all these knowledge areas, they have their tasks. So maybe talk a bit about the model that is used here.
Yeah, so the last slide showed you 6 knowledge areas, and the 6 knowledge, I mean, the BABOK is a framework, so it may help you finding out what kind of knowledge areas you need to know to be able to become a good BA. Every knowledge area consists of several tasks, and every task is elaborated in the BABOK, and that uses the IIBA model, and that's a mnemonic for input, guides, output, and enablers. As you can see here, that's for a pizza. That would be the input would be the raw materials, the ingredients you need to make a pizza. So the output, of course, is the pizza. That's the product. It can also be additional services like delivery, free of charge. Of course, on the input side, there's also the customer demand. So you have input, you have output, and then on the other side, you have guidelines or guides. And most of the times, these are business rules or KPIs you have. So that control what you do. And on the other side, there's enablers. To make it more easier than this example, you could say, well, we're going to make a vegetable soup. So what would be the input? Well, that's the ingredients. The ingredients, some water, some herbs, some vegetable, of course, and the output is the vegetable soup. So what would be the guideline? The guide is the cookbook. So you have a cookbook which says what to do. And then there's the enabler. The enabler would be a gas stove, for instance, or a wood fire. That's something you need to make sure you can cook the soup to prepare it. Okay, so the same thing is more or less in the BABOK. You have the input, and this is a diagram from top to bottom. You see the input on top, you see the output at the bottom, and you see guidelines and tools. So what's the difference between input and guidelines and tools? Both have a flow to the dark bit which says 4.2 conduct elicitation. Well, I can tell you 4.2 conduct elicitation is a task. And this is a task that is part of the elicitation and collaboration knowledge area. And every task has some kind of model as you show here. So you know as a BA, okay, I need some input to be able to perform this task. And the output will be used. The output, of course, is elicitation results. And I especially took this example because everybody knows what conduct elicitation is. That's, for instance, doing an interview or doing a workshop. So what do you need to be able to do a good interview? Well, you need a plan. You need to think beforehand, what kind of questions am I going to ask? So that's the input. Without the input, you cannot perform the task. So that's why it's an input. So these are mandatory. Well, you do something because it may lead to an output. And that's the elicitation results. That's 4.2. And you can also see which task will use the output of this task. So you see task using this output, 4.3, confirm elicitation results. So that will be the next task you're going to do using the output of this task. Okay, and then there's guidelines and tools. Yeah, business analysis approach, that's part of another knowledge area, which is business analysis, planning and monitoring. These are things you can use to be able to do the right thing when you conduct the elicitation. So that's basically what the structure is of each chapter of the BABOK guide concerning the knowledge areas. Okay. Yeah. Next, please. We have 4 minutes left. It's not a lot of time. And then there's elements. So elements, yeah, you can see here. Let me give you just an example. Plan business analysis approach. Every BA has to think about, well, okay, I'm a BA. I need some kind of approach to do my job. And it depends on the situation whether you use a more predictive approach or you use a more adaptive approach. Some organizations really are used to planning everything. So everything is being planned. More and more you see the agility coming in. So more and more organizations are transforming into agile organizations in which planning becomes, well, you do some planning, but you don't plan everything beforehand. So that's a more adaptive approach. So this choice has an impact on the kind of formality and level of detail of the deliverables you have. So the predictive approach, for instance, uses a more formal way of communication and collaboration. The adaptive approach, is not that formal anymore. Also, the activities, predictive and formal approaches use more complete deliverables that are identified first, whereas adaptive, informal approaches use deliverables that grow with time. Also, the timing, predictive approaches uses more like phases, and adaptive approaches make use of iterations, so they work iteratively. Of course, complexity and risk have a big impact on how you plan your BA approach. For instance, when you are building medical systems that has a lot of risks, of course. If you don't do that properly, then people may die if you build the wrong system, or you're building rocket kind of systems. These are, of course, much more complex and riskful operations than just building some kind of app, for instance. Acceptance is also one of the elements that is something to think about when you plan your BA approach. So elements are things that may help you doing your task properly. And that may be different, of course, from task to task, and may differ from situation to situation. But yeah, they may help you in becoming a better BA. That's, I think, about it.
So I see we're on the time. So for people that are already squeezed in other meetings, and feel free to hop off. We will probably do another 2 minutes, just quickly highlighting what is next. So we will talk about how knowledge areas will fit into projects, So there are different knowledge areas and tasks that you can do in different phases of the project. We are, of course, going to talk about a lot of techniques, which will become part of the sessions we will have about the knowledge areas. And then we basically put best practice techniques to use during certain tasks and activities. We are going to talk about perspectives, because I think this is an important one where
especially agile and IT.
Yeah.
It's we're all doing agile in IT. I mean, BAs sometimes do business change initiatives, but I think in 99% of all the situations, you have to you need IT, and in also a very high percentage, agile is going to be part of the way of working.
Yeah. So we will have a separate session discussing the different perspectives. How do they relate to the different knowledge areas? How do we look differently at certain tasks we do? Also to the elements you were just describing. Are we doing it more and more iteratively, or do we need to really plan everything up front? So that will be touched upon. And yeah, maybe also to see that those perspectives tie into the certain types of business analysts.
Yeah,
I think some words here.
Yeah, the T-shaped. I think this is one we will repeat in a later session, because T-shaped. I think a lot of people know what T-shaped means. You have a broad knowledge of a lot of things, and also some specialism. Some people call themselves generalizing specialists, so they have some kind of specialism, and they want to become more a generalist. So, for instance, they know a lot about testing, and they want to know more about business analysis. So that's what you can. That's a good way to grow as a person, yeah. And then there's people who are very broad. You can start doing your BABOK, and then as you come up with some kind of project and you need, for instance, maybe it's a BI project, you need to specialize in one of the areas. So then you go more in depth to become a specializing generalist. So you can do either way, and both it's great. And you have the AAC, as I told before. You have the Agile Analysis certification of IIBA, and there you will learn how to become a better agile analyst. So you can start as a ECBA or CCBA or CBAP, and then you can specialize in a certain area which is called agile, and that's also still very broad. So you can learn how to become more like more an agile analyst, and learn more about Scrum, for instance, or maybe XP or SAFe, things like that. So this last slide, Luc.
Yep, wrapping up. So a bit over time, but hopefully worthwhile the few minutes extra. So wrapping up, so what we really try to do is here to untangle the BABOK. There are a lot of topics, a lot of things. So just to kind of set the scene. So basically what you do is really set in the knowledge areas. So it's the tasks. What do I do as a business analyst? How you do it. So what are the competencies you need to make sure that the tasks you perform are done properly, and the way you do it. So what techniques can you use during your work? So again, it's really a relationship between knowledge areas, competencies, and techniques that together would hopefully make you a better or more professionalized business analyst, or understanding the task you do within business analysis. Again, thank you for your engagement, and have a really great day.